Let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves and the fact that they have the number one defense in the NBA 10 games into the season, and not just the number one defense in the NBA. They are number one by a long shot, depending on what you look at, whether it's cleaning the glass, which I kind of like to look at first because it takes away garbage time and half-court heaves and stuff like that. Or if you go to NBA.com, the Timberwolves are still the number one defensive rating by a bullet. And they are currently riding a 7-game win streak. They beat the Warriors again last night after a wild scuffle 2 minutes into the game. I haven't watched that game yet. I was watching Clippers Nuggets, but that was pretty wild. Draymond Green needs a long suspension. I don't know what this dude has been on the last 3 games, but he's been unhinged, and quite frankly, I mean, it's been boiling up, obviously. I don't want to touch on this too much, but it's clear Draymond was looking for a reason to go at Gobert because for whatever reason, it's personal between those two. Seems to be more one-sided on Draymond's part, but if you got a bunch of people coming to the defense of Rudy Gobert, that means you really fucked up. So Draymond deserves a long suspension, but let's talk about the Timberwolves and their 7-game win streak. And I want to talk about their defense mostly because I already talked about Anthony Edwards. I already gave my thoughts on the Timberwolves. I was pretty high on this team going into the season, and maybe I might have undersold it. First things first, Rudy Gobert is back to peak Rudy Gobert. Last year, he was nowhere near the same as peak Rudy Gobert. He was injured. He mentioned that before. And also, his rim protection and his defensive film just didn't look the same. His metrics were down. And even in his last season in Utah, it was still good. It was still elite, but it wasn't like 2018, 2019 season or 2017, 2018 season Rudy Gobert. But so far, Rudy Gobert has been performing like peak Gobert. 10 games into the season, when Gobert is the closest defender within 3 feet, opponents shoot 35.8% when Rudy Gobert is defending field goals. That's ridiculous. That's like a difference from the average, which is 47.5% from the field. That is a difference of 11.7%. That means opponents shoot nearly 12% worse when Rudy Gobert is in the vicinity as the nearest defender. But it's not just that peak Rudy Gobert is back. He's more comfortable in space. His rim protection is still crazy, and it's not just the blocked shots either, which Rudy Gobert is back up to over 2 blocks a game. It's the intimidation. Like, there were plenty of times in that first Warriors game where Dario Saric, guys like that, they were just clearly scared of trying to attempt any type of layup at the rim. They were trying all these weird pump fakes, weird shots that players normally don't take. This Timberwolves team is the only team so far this year to have beaten the Warriors, the Nuggets, and the Celtics. And not only that, looked like they belong. They rose up to the moment, like they were looking for the challenge, which is also the mark of a great defense, I think, across in any sport, is that the confidence and swagger you play with, getting up for the big teams. And this Timberwolves team, with every win, their confidence grows, and it's because of their defense. And Rudy Gobert, his movement is back, it seems like. His rim protection is back. And unlike peak Gobert in Utah, Rudy Gobert now has size and hellhounds on the perimeter, talking mainly about Jaden McDaniels, who arguably should have been an all-defensive team player last year, is going to make a serious bid for it this year, but the 6'10 forward that could guard literally everybody on the floor, he has been playing fantastic on the defensive end. Opponents shoot 35.7% from the field when Jaden McDaniels is the man guarding the player, and opponents shoot nearly 11% worse when Jaden McDaniels is the nearest defender. And then you look at Anthony Edwards, who his on-ball defense is just fucking ridiculous. Yeah, we all know, everybody has mentioned it, and it's on film too. His off-ball defense, it could be a little spotty at times, but man, when he gets a matchup like a Jason Tatum, or when he takes the challenge as, you know, guarding one of the best players, the best perimeter players on the other team, and this has been going on the last few years, he is up for the challenge. He is huge. He's built like a football player, and his athleticism, he can slide across the perimeter and be really aggressive. So Rudy Gobert just has two elite, borderline elite on-ball defenders pressuring the ball, getting over screens, unlike in Utah where I like Royce O'Neal, but if Royce O'Neal is your ace defensively, your best defender on the team, that kind of says a lot about the Jazz perimeter defense, the Jazz of yesteryear under Quinn Snyder. The defensive personnel is just way different. The Timberwolves are huge. Mike Conley is still a savvy defender. It's impossible to screen him. And then Karl Anthony Towns, he's been playing well in this defensive scheme. They obviously have Gobert more in a drop, and I think the Timberwolves are mixing up stuff a little bit more with Karl Anthony Towns because remember, before the Gobert trade, the Timberwolves tried that putting Cat way up on the level, trapping everything, that kind of high-risk, high-reward defense to kind of mask Cat's deficiencies. But with Gobert in the drop, they've been testing out more coverages with Cat. And that's the other thing with this Timberwolves team, too. They're versatile. Naz Reid has been playing great. We can't forget about Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who really showed out in that Nuggets series last year and has figured himself out as a role player. That guy is also 6'6" and also a hellhound defensively. Naz Reid is still 6'8", but big, can shoot, can drive, attack a closeout. He's just a really good big. I love Naz Reid. Shake Milton, even if he's not getting as many minutes as he might have hoped, he's still in the rotation. He's still 6'5". The Wolves just have size across the perimeter, and we can't forget about the do-it-all Swiss Army knife for that team, Kyle Anderson, who is also 6'8", a smart defender. No, he's not going to lock down the Jason Tatums of the world, but he's going to compete and give effort and try his ass off. And the Timberwolves defense has been putting up impressive numbers during this run. They are taking away the right shots. If you look at their defensive frequency, and this was jarring looking this up, but if you look at their frequency, they allow the least amount of corner threes, they allow the third least amount of rim attempts in the NBA, and they allow a lot of mid-range shots, they allow a lot of, non-corner threes. But even in the shots the Timberwolves are willing to give up, opponents still shoot poorly against the Timberwolves. Opponents only shoot 39.5% in all mid-rangers against the Timberwolves. Like I said, they don't allow a lot of corner threes, and when they do, opponents do shoot 40%, but they don't allow really any. And they allow a lot of non-corner threes, but opponents still shoot 29.3% from those areas against the Timberwolves. Now, maybe those numbers normalize and the three-point luck shifts back to the opponent, but I see it more as the Timberwolves are long and fucking huge, and even when they allow the shots that they are willing to concede, they still get out and fly out and contest shots, block some shots. So even in the shots the Timberwolves are allowing, opponents are still shooting like shit against them. They allow the 5th lowest percentage at the rim in the NBA. They are incredible defensively. They allow the 2nd least amount of points in the paint. They are also 8th in opponent turnover percentage, so they're forcing turnovers too. The only weaknesses I really see against the Timberwolves is that they are not the defensive rebounding team that they should be. They're sort of middle of the pack, and hopefully that improves as the season goes on. And maybe you can run out on the Timberwolves a little bit, but their half-court defense also is just fucking ridiculous. They only allow 84 points per 100 possessions in the half court, which is 5 more than the next best half court defense, which is the Clippers at 89.3 points per 100. The defense is ridiculous, and they remind me of, and not to do cross sports here, but if there are any football fans, the mark of a great defense is how they rally to the ball too. It's like the Ravens or the 49ers of the early 2010s or the Seattle Seahawks or the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the entire defense just rallies to the ball and gets a good tackle. The Timberwolves are like a good tackling football team that rallies to the ball. Whenever a team gets into the paint, there's just arms everywhere converging on the ball carrier, converging on the rim, or whenever there's a three-point shot, it seems like they try to contest those too. The Timberwolves are just everywhere, and I guess that's the mark of a good defense. But The Timberwolves have their identity. They are figuring out some of the Cat Gobert stuff, which honestly last year was more so due to injury and Gobert not being the same and Cat missing a bunch of time, so they didn't have as much time to gel. But early on, the Timberwolves have found their identity, and that's being hellhounds on the defensive end.